thank you for joining me for another, I guess today is the 5th video in this series, Massage for Everyone. I'm Beauty King Blanchard from Rooted Arts, and this is Eric, my model and partner. And these are just some more tips for working on people at home. So like I talked about in my earlier videos, and if you haven't seen the first one, Setting the Scene, I recommend you go back and watch that. You want to make sure that you are also comfortable, because the person that we're working on can only be as comfortable as we are. So when we're working on somebody on the floor, I know that I want to be conscious of whether my knees are comfortable or not. Right now I'm okay, but I have a pillow here in case I decide I want to lean on it or put it under my knees to be comfortable. I have something under Eric's knees so that his back is able to rest comfortably on the floor and to relax a little bit. And the reason I decided to demo on the floor today is because this is a lot of the times how we end up working on people at home if you don't have the convenience of owning your own massage table. So one of the things that I wanted to share today, which applies for any of the things that I've already talked about in addressing the neck and shoulders, is that when something is happening in our shoulders, it is also happening in our hips, and vice versa. They reflect each other. So in the general assessment that I think I did in the second video, you do some straightening of the body. And when we have someone on the floor, we've kind of, again, replicated this slightly above position where we can see the whole body and see the level of the hips, which one might be raised a little higher, which one might be closer to the shoulder, and just the lines of the body. So really look from shoulder to shoulder, hip to hip, knee to knee. And what's kind of cool about the floor is that we have kind of infinite room for the person to spread out on. And so in this position, the person that we're working on can be a little more active. So Eric, I'm going to have you stretch your arms out a little bit. Just extend them. Yeah. And you see that his hands are face up. And that's great because that replicates that opening of the shoulders that we've been talking about. When we close them, when we put our palms down, our shoulders close in response. And so how does that feel?
A lot more open in the chest.
Yeah. So it's already encouraging his chest and shoulder muscles to relax. And from here, again, I want to be conscious of my posture to make sure I stay comfortable. And I can just encourage this opening. So I'm just putting slight pressure on his shoulders. How does that feel?
Good. It's about a 2 or 3.
So that's in that light range of pressure, which is where we want to stay. Unless you've really studied anatomy and physiology, the risk of hurting someone is just not worth it to go deeper. And even as an experienced massage therapist, 20 years in, I find that the body can really repair itself. And simply showing up and supporting the unwinding of the body produces more profound results than digging in. So now I'm just going to shift his hips a little bit because I see that there's a little bit of play between his shoulders and his hips, where his shoulders are depressed in this open position and his hips are kind of lifting a little bit. And this one is a little more towards the ceiling and this one is a little back, which often is the result of crossing our legs at our desks or while seated, which I happen to know Eric does. So I'm going to, with the hand that's closest to me, under his left hip here, I'm just gently lifting, while on this hand that's closest to you, I'm gently depressing, pushing down towards the floor. How does that feel?
Good.
And what pressure about is that?
A 3 or 4 on my right hip.
So it's a little bit higher, right? And that is, again, a reflective of how subjective this is, because I feel like I'm providing the same amount of pressure, and to him, it feels like a little more. So another reminder of why communication is so important. And then I'm just gonna relax it. And you wanna go into any move slowly and come out of it slowly. So now I'm gonna go up into his head and neck area. And I'm gonna find the position that's comfortable for me, because working on the floor, right? You wanna just make sure to keep that position. And I'm also keeping the line of my body nice and straight. So I'm pulling on his cranial ridge, which is a move that I've reviewed before. His occipital area here is just full of muscle attachments. So I'm just doing more of that circular friction that I talked about in the last video, and going up into his mastoid process. With his arms in this open position, we've kind of already encouraged these muscles to give us a little bit more slack, a little more relaxation. Because opening our shoulders just naturally gives them more space. And we want to encourage them to use that opportunity to relax instead of to compress. And I feel a stretch happening in my right leg here. So I'm gently encouraging that in a way that helps me relax while I'm supporting his body. You want to be conscious at least, of what's happening in your body as in the person that you're working in. So I've just gently tilted, and this left hand here is supporting his cranial base, that occipital ridge, gently lifting up, while my right hand is just gently guiding his head to tilt back. And I'm not tilting at a severe angle. You can see that his chin lifts and moves slightly, but it's very gentle. What pressure does that feel like?
2.
And this is really important because there are a lot of things that happen in those in the top of our spine. And we want to make sure not to put any pressure on the nerves up there. So I'm going to go back on my knees, because that is how it's easiest to maintain a good alignment for myself. And I'm going to go back in and gently put some pressure on the fascia layer. So the fascia is that 3D connective tissue that covers everything. And when we're working on it, when we're working on the most superficial layer, which is the layer closest to the top, we're just going to use a very light pressure. You can think about it as like the kind of pressure that you need to manipulate saran wrap. If you try too hard, it'll just all stick together. Fascia on its superficial layers will react kind of similarly. So I have my hands under his pectoralis, his breast muscles, and I'm just pulling up. Because even though this is someone that we're totally comfortable with, because we're working on people at home, if we put pressure directly on someone's chest muscles, it can be distracting. It's just a sensitive area. So we want to affect it by working around it. Otherwise, we move into a different type of massage, which has its place, but that is not this. How's that feel?
Good.
Good. And now I can see that the line between his shoulders and hips has straightened even more. So, and that this shoulder is closer to that hip. So what I'm going to do in response to that is I'm going to just have you bring your arms up into kind of like a Y. How does that feel?
Comfortable.
Yeah, so we're keeping in that range of comfort, and I'm also just encouraging this to open up. And so from here, I'm gonna just kind of hook under his arms, and I don't want to put pressure in his underarm area because there's a lot of fragile stuff in there. But I'm hooking into the base of his arms with most of my pressure coming from my fingertips on the back of his shoulder as I wrap around. I'm just going to encourage them gently to pull up. And I'm pulling up a little bit more on his right than on his left so that I can get that nice even line in his posture. How's that feel?
It's good.
And that's just, again, stretching out the fascia and thereby the musculature underneath it. And I'm going to go back in and just follow his clavicle and do some nice gentle circles along his clavicle, the bone that sticks out at the top here. How's that feel?
Very good.
And we're just encouraging the body to use this position to relax and to release itself. I'm going to use the palm of my hands, the heel of my hands, to go in and just do some spreading. So I'm pushing slightly down and out on his shoulders. Again, I'm not putting the pressure directly in his armpit, in his underarm area. How does that feel?
Wonderful.
And I'm going to go back in and do another one of those pulls up on his arms. And then I'm going to revisit his neck in this new position. And I've gotten myself a little lower because when I'm going into that occipital area, my hands have to be lower. And if I'm up high, it'll put stress on my low back. So I'm just pulling gently up towards me on his occipital area, that base of the skull there. I'm doing some circular motions out to the mastoid process, those bony protrusions behind his ears. And what pressure would you say that is?
About a 3.
We want to make sure to stay under a 6. That's what I'm shooting for. And really, again, in these delicate areas, I would highly recommend that you stay under a 4 or 5, because then if an area is more sensitive, the person you're working on has some time to react or to verbally tell you. All right. So I'm still not quite satisfied with the hip to shoulder balance that I have, though it is a lot more balanced. So I'm actually going to go down to his feet because, like I've said, what is happening in the shoulders and the hips is a reflection of each other. So we want to really consider the entire body while working with it. And so I'm lifting up his feet, and I don't want his knees to straighten because that's going to put some strain on them. So I'm just gently lifting and pulling towards me with his knees still remaining bent. And you can see that changes what's happening in his hips. And again, I'm going to go lower. And I'm leaning forward so that you can still see me on the camera. And now I'm just slightly lifting the outside of his feet and pushing his feet towards each other. What level of pressure would you say that is, Eric?
This is 2.
So it's still very gentle, and you can see that travels all the way up to his hips. His whole body is kind of moving in response to what's happening in his feet. And that just acts as a way to integrate the body, to encourage it to move together again. And now the line between his hips is much different. So I'm actually pushing slightly down on the hand closest to me, the hip closest to me, and pulling up on his other one. And then Eric, I'm going to have you bring your hands back down to your side. And I'm lifting myself up so that I can, again, from above, see what's happening from shoulder to hip, from shoulder to hip, and throughout his body. And it looks much more even. How are you feeling right now?
Comfortable, yeah.
Yeah. So our bodies really, I just want to reinforce this because I feel like it's so important, are just amazing at adjusting themselves. And just like all of us, they just need a little encouragement. So showing up with a gentle touch and an intention to support that natural unwinding can just accomplish so much. Thank you for joining us for today's video. We'll be back on next Saturday at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, and I hope to see you there. Feel free to please check out, like, and subscribe to this channel and playlist. Okay. I'll see you soon.